The American Indian movement back in the 1970s, we identified the American Indian people of the United States as the Palestinians of America, and we call the Palestinians the American Indians of the Middle East.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 22 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org, our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. The Israeli government seized another ship on the high seas carrying a humanitarian cargo bound for Gaza. It was called the Estelle, and it left Sweden in June, sailed all around Europe, and then tried to make its way to the Gaza Strip. We have coverage including some video smuggled off the ship. Then, to mark the passing of a giant of the Indian rights movement, we'll rebroadcast a portion of an interview I did with Russell Means. He died this week at the age of 72. In the section we show, he talks about Palestinians and about details of Thanksgivings that few want to remember. Finally, the United National Anti-War Coalition called for demonstrations on October 7th to mark the 11th anniversary of the occupation of Afghanistan. We'll have some video of a rally in Harlem, New York, and then a comment about a surprising editorial in the New York Times. The Estelle tried to bring 40 tons of concrete to the Gaza Strip, soccer balls, toys, other assorted items. On board were a score of people, mostly from Sweden, but also members of parliaments of European countries, a good number from Greece. There are also a few Israelis on board, people who hate what their government is doing to the Palestinians. One of them was a former Air Force pilot, Yonatan Shapira.
Why am I here? I guess I'm here because I am an Israeli citizen and feel that it's my obligation to struggle for what is just, and I believe it's a very important and just cause to try to break the Gaza blockade. I believe that Gaza today could be called the biggest ghetto in the world, and I see it as my duty to participate in something that is trying to liberate the ghetto that is created by the army that I used to serve in some 9 years ago. I was a pilot in the Israeli Air Force and decided that I have much better ways to fight for what is right, and that's why I'm here.
15 boats of Israeli commandos surrounded the small ship which was flying the flag of Finland. Contrary to what you might have heard, the Israeli boarding was not peaceful. They used electric shock tasers on several of the activists, including Israelis. As is their practice, the Israeli sailors took everything they could get their hands on. But one small SD card slipped through their fingers, and it shows the coming assault on the ship.
Be ready for the water cannon also. Be ready for the water cannon.
They offer them to take care of our cargo. Yes.
Lock the door. Yes. They lock the door.
Attention. Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
You have to stop the war and to turn back. What you do now is war against humanity.
Attention, attention. Navy promised that our cargo will go to Gaza. Over.
Nobody forbid you to come in my country. You cannot forbid me to sail. I am a Mediterranean. We are from many countries, from all over the world. We are traveling, we are sailing like free people. We don't have terrorists, we don't have pirates in our seas. Turn back. This is the duty. The duty is not to obey to officers and to leaders and to governments that they don't respect the law.
Hello?
We are not afraid because you look like pirates. Our heart is clean.
Now, Israel claims that they keep a naval blockade of the Gaza Strip to prevent the importation of weapons. If that were true, they could have just inspected the Estelle and sent it on its way. But that's not the method of the Israeli apartheid government. Despite the views of the craven Secretary General of the United Nations, this action by the Israeli Navy is one of piracy. Now to coverage of the event by Al Jazeera.
We are getting reports that a ship carrying pro-Palestinian activists bound for Gaza is being boarded. The vessel is carrying aid and is trying to breach Israel's naval blockade of the Palestinian territory. Well, let's speak to Michael Lofgren, media coordinator, spokesman for the Estelle. He's talking to us on the phone. Can you tell us what has happened, please?
Yes, around 10:15 Central European time, I was talking to one of our spokespersons on Estelle, Drofaila, and he told me that 5 or 6 military vessels were closing up to Estelle, and 10, maybe 15 minutes later, he stated that soldiers wearing masks were trying to board the boat.
And any idea why they're trying to board the boat? Have you been provocative in any way?
No. The provocation in this context is, of course, the blockade. On the ships are peaceful activists who has done lots of, non-violent training, and our cargo is consists of footballs and cement and musical instrument and children books. So I don't think that could be the reason for the attack.
Tell us about the communication you would have had, I'm assuming, with Israel before you embarked on this journey, and how you made clear that they should be confident with the cargo that you're carrying.
We have been sailing for several months now. We began in Sweden in early June this summer, and we have visited like 20 ports around Europe. And in every port we have, been very open to the public and to the media and to the authorities to come and inspect our cargo and see what kind of people we are ourselves.
So you say that Israeli troops have boarded your ship, some of them wearing masks. Have they faced any sort of resistance from anybody on board your ship?
No, I wouldn't think so, because, as I said, we have done lots of non-violent training, and since we are unarmed, it would be very stupid to try to make resistance against armed soldiers.
Okay, so what are you going to do now?
Well, now I'm trying to get contact with my friends aboard the ship, of course, and I'm worried that they will be taken to Ashdod and maybe accused of illegally entering Israel, as has happened before, and then they will be sent away, I presume, or trialed. But I really hope that this time they will not be hurt and like happened 2 years ago.
On the Mavi Marmara, during that fatal boarding of the ship. Michael Lofgren, thank you very much for talking to us. Michael was confirming that the ship bound for Gaza has been boarded by Israeli troops. He said that some of them are wearing masks. He hasn't been in touch with those on board the ship yet to find out what their next course of action is likely to be, but he did confirm to us that they are taking merely aid goods to Gaza, and that there hasn't been any explanation as to why the ship has been boarded other than them breaking the Israeli blockade on Gaza. We'll certainly keep you up to date when we get any more details about what's happening on board that ship.
Now to an interview with the late Russell Means, who was in Connecticut in 2009 trying to help the Scaticoke Indians win federal recognition. In this portion of the interview, I asked him about Palestinians.
Now, before you mentioned Palestinians and Zionists, and there's a kind of connection, or is there? We have, our program mostly deals with issues about that, about the Palestinians. And a speaker is coming into Connecticut named Benny Morris. And he is an Israeli who wrote about the expulsion of Palestinians in 1948 from their homes. And first it was all scientific, and then he became a political person, and he approved of it and said it wasn't done enough. And if it had been done completely, there wouldn't be any problem over there. And then he made this astounding statement that the American democracy could never have grown unless there had been the annihilation of the American Indian. And all historians understand that now. And I wonder if Indian people know much about the Palestinian situation and appreciate that.
Well, first of all, the American Indian movement back in the 1970s, we identified the American Indian people of the United States as the Palestinians of America, and we call the Palestinians the American Indians of the Middle East, because the policies are the same. Bred, born in the United States of America's Indian policy. Now, what you don't know and have never been told is the truth about the formulation and foundation. It wasn't a stamp act. It wasn't governed by lack of representation, whatever that saying is. No, the truth is, the King of England in 1700s and 1736 and 1740s and all of those made treaties with the Indian people west of the Appalachian Mountains and promised England would not grow beyond its 13 colonies, period, beyond the Appalachians. So in the 1750s, 60s, and early 1770s, the landowners, like George Washington, who was the largest landowner in America in 1776, they hired mercenaries. The most famous mercenary they hired was Daniel Boone to go west of the Appalachians and map out the land. So the entire reason for the creation of the United States of America and its rebellion against the King of England was for land speculation, was to expand, and so the rich could get richer. The rich could get richer. Now you must remember, in the colonial times, only white males with property were considered citizens of the United States of America. Everyone else was an indentured servant or a merchant of some type, okay? But under the dominion of the property, those who own property, white males. And that was true for decades after the foundation of the United States of America. So that's when the policies of annihilation began. Smallpox blankets, as I mentioned, and other diseases and other measles, letting loose the pigs in the South among the Indian and into the forest, pigs that carry measles and what have you. So, which we were susceptible to. And it goes all the way to the west, not counting the uncommon massacres like just right north of you in Massachusetts. The killing of what the white man, the Pilgrims, call King Philip, a Wampanoag, the son of the man who welcomed the Pilgrims. And they hung his head on a pike outside Pilgrim Village for 35 years, or it's 25. But at any rate, Prince Philip's head, Medicum was his name. And so this is the paybacks. That was the original Thanksgiving, by the way, because the then governor, English governor of the colony of Massachusetts, after they had massacred one of Medicum's villages, he called for a celebration of Thanksgiving. And he wrote, and this is a fact, he called for all the colonies to massacre Indians and have feasts of Thanksgivings. That was the first Thanksgiving. And that's documented fact, okay? It's written. So the United States of America, of course, was founded on the big lie, just like Thanksgiving is the big lie. And American history is the big lie. And American policy of annihilation and war continues in Palestine.
On the 11th anniversary of the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan, UNAC called for demonstrations. We have video here of the demonstration in Harlem, New York City.
This is a rich man war. What is the poor man fighting for? Mothers and fathers are quiet because the children are dying. Mothers and fathers are quiet because the children are dying. This 11th anniversary is holding a number of actions in cities throughout the country. We are so proud that Harlem was the host community for this action here in New York City.
Today marks the 11th year of the beginning of the war in Afghanistan in October 7th, 2001. Here we are 11 years later. Today, U.S. imperialism and global capitalism are in the crisis. It is a terminal crisis, and we know that the system cannot be fixed. But here in the United States, the rulers don't yet face a political crisis, because there can be no political crisis for them in the absence of massive popular resistance. Instead, it is the people, and especially black people, who are in crisis. And it is a crisis that is more profound in many ways than back in 1968, when we started hollering power to the people. The United States is incontestably the biggest police state in the world, and yet they don't face a political crisis because of that. Black people have a human rights crisis of epic proportions. 700,000 people stopped on the streets of New York for no good constitutional reason, and it's even worse proportionally in Philadelphia and in other cities, and yet they don't have a political crisis facing them in New York City. So we face a multitude of crises, but without massive resistance, the rulers are not placed in a political crisis, despite all the other crises that surround them. Our job is to bring the political crisis to their doorstep. That's the job that you are doing right now.
We are not criminals. That's right. We have to defend each other. We have to imagine a world where men in uniforms are walking around with guns to shoot people whenever they want. That's right. This year alone, since I've been doing this, 17 people, 17 young, black, and brown men and women have been murdered by the NYPD. I'm not taking this shit anymore. Stop imperialism. Down with it, right? We don't want it anymore. We know it is the master. We know it is the responsible of all of our tragedies. We know that. And we know that imperialism is in crisis. We already understand that. But we need to come together. All of us, people from Latin America, people from Palestine, people from everywhere, we need to come together against this beast called imperialism.
And when you want to break away from the two-party system, well, you have two parties that are two sides of the same coin, and that coin happens to be in the hands of the wealthiest 1% of the country. Guess what they call you? Radical. A radical. I'm proud to be a radical.
Thank you, Nellie Bailey, and the Harlem Tenants Council, and all of the organizations that really made today possible. The Islamic Leadership Council, CARE, DRUM, Bayan, Anak Bayan. We could go on and on. All of the organizations that acted together in unity.
The New York Times wrote a major editorial last Sunday called "Time to Pack Up." It said there never will be a U.S. victory in Afghanistan, and that its even modest goals will never be met. The editors called for the troops to be brought home not in 2014, but as soon as it safely can be done. It doubted the Afghan army would ever control the country. The editorial reads, "It's the most that probably can be hoped for is that the army continues to hold Kabul and the other major cities." It notes that the so-called elected government of Karzai is a crooked mess. The editors don't mention women's rights at all, and that's supposed to be the big reason we keep troops there year after year. So now it's not just the peace movement that says bring the troops home now. It's the same position held by the most important newspaper in the country. You would think that Bob Schieffer would have asked the major presidential candidates about the Times' reversal of positions, but instead he allowed them both to agree with each other to keep the blood flowing. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.
When the world has gone crazy and it's all becoming clear, when they're gunning down our comrades and it seems the end is near, as they're loading up the launchers for the tear gas grenades, we can take off our bandanas and kiss behind the barricades. When it's madness all around and you can see this at a glance, we will sing and we will cry, we will laugh and we will dance, as they shout their marching orders beneath the helicopter blades. We shall seize the moment for a kiss behind the barricades. They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades. As the movement grows, there will be hills and bends, but at the center of the struggle are your lovers and your friends. And the more we hold each other up, the less we can be swayed. Here's to love and solidarity, and a kiss behind the barricades.